Hi, I'm Kelly Dedman. Welcome to Bio Channel and our salute to black culture. In the 70s and 80s, a black man wasn't considered a box office draw. Megastar Julia Roberts lobbied for Denzel Washington to star in The Pelican Brief, a role originally written for a white man. The movie's success ended the box office myth. Denzel proved that a black man could fill seats with all people, all colors. Next stop, superstardom.
He is on the short list of American actors who command a fee of more than $10 million a picture.
Andrew Beckett was fired. You'll hear two explanations for why he was fired. Ours and theirs.
Denzel Washington is an amazing actor. He's an incredibly powerful movie star.
He's a wonderful actor. He really is very powerful.
The Academy Award-winning actor grew up in a religious family far from Hollywood.
My father was a minister, and we didn't go to the movies.
Denzel credits his mother and his wife with inspiring him to work hard and leading him down the path to stardom.
We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us.
He had all of the proper things in place as a child that gave him the courage to kind of launch out into deep water to see if he could make it, and he did.
He's been called one of the sexiest people alive, but he prefers to be judged by what he does as a performer rather than how he looks. And what he does is Oscar-caliber acting.
He's going to go down in history as this classic American leading man.
Not far from New York City lies the integrated middle-class suburb of Mount Vernon. There, on December 28, 1954, Denzel Washington Jr. was born into a hard-working religious family. He was the second of 3 children. Denzel's parents worked hard to create a financially secure environment. His father worked 2 jobs during the week, leaving hours before the kids woke up and returning after they were asleep. On Sundays, he was a Pentecostal minister who preached to his church with a passionate flair.
Big personality. That's what I remember of him. Very articulate, big framed, very happy, big voice.
His mother, Lennis, worked as a beautician and owned several beauty shops. She was a strict but loving mother who sang in the church choir.
She grew up in the Alamo Church. She was a singer. Very nice lady. Had strong sense of family. His mother and father, they did a good job with their family.
Church and hard work were the hallmarks of Denzel's childhood. His father only allowed the kids to see movies with biblical themes. His neighborhood was just a stone's throw from the mean streets of the Bronx, where a few kids went to college and many more ended up in trouble. To create a safe haven while they worked, the Washingtons sent 6-year-old Denzel and his brother David to the Boys and Girls Club after school.
They knew that when we came to the Boys and Girls Club, we was going to get proper supervision, discipline, and that their whole goal was to teach us to be, not to be, professional athletes or entertainers, but to be good citizens, to be good moral people.
The Boys and Girls Club became Denzel's home away from home. Denzel's own father was never on hand to give his son a pat on the back after a game well played. He was usually too busy at work or at his church.
Go from the Boys and Girls Club to the playground right up the street called 4th Street. And we'd play all day, play basketball and have fun and have a good time, and we'd be out there all night. And then after that, we get tired of playing basketball, the lights would shut off, and then we sit around and have a good time with each other. And I think one of the things is that Denzel always had a very unique laugh. He was always a good joke teller.
By the time he was 11, to keep out of mischief and help the family's finances, Denzel joined the workforce with part-time jobs at neighborhood beauty and barber shops. As Denzel entered his teens, his strong family foundation started to crumble. Denzel's parents' marriage fell apart and they separated. His father moved to Virginia, although he continued to stay in touch with his son. Denzel remained with his mother, developing a tight bond. But the loss of his father left Denzel confused, and he began showing signs that he might join the bad boys of the neighborhood. He rebelled violently, getting into fights at school. Concerned for his future, Denzel's mother sent him away to the Oakland Academy boarding school to straighten him out. It was a prep school made up of mostly rich white kids in upstate New York. Denzel was mediocre at academics, but he excelled at sports.
The first time I saw Denzel Washington, I thought it was a second coming of Jackie Robinson. He was a great athlete. He could move. He had good coordination. He made a basket to win a basketball game, and I wanted to take his picture. And he says, "You got to take the picture and follow, pass the ball to me too." That's the kind of a fellow he was. He's always a team fellow.
Denzel dreamed of becoming a famous sports star, but many of his friends thought he might grow up to be a comedian. Underneath his funny facade was a kid who was actually shy and self-conscious about a gap in his front teeth.
He had a lot of great sense of humor, smile. He was very popular. Everybody loved him. And he was a little prankster. He liked to fool around, joke around, but he never did anything wrong.
During his boarding school years, Denzel returned each summer to Mount Vernon to work at the Boys and Girls Club.
I can remember him around the age of 14, 15, and he was committed to his job. He enjoyed his work, and you can see the growth, accepting the responsibility.
In 1972, he enrolled at Fordham University in the Bronx, not far from home. He tried pre-med courses to please his mother, who wanted him to be a doctor, but he couldn't handle the curriculum and switched to journalism. And that, too, failed to ignite his passion. And he finally found his true calling when he took part in a theater production while working at a YMCA summer camp. Denzel returned to college, aiming for the stars. As a college junior in his first acting class, Denzel boldly told his classmates that he wanted to be the best actor in the world.
And everybody kind of turned around and went, you want to do what? You want to be what? I don't know. It was kind of a naive thing to say, but that's how I felt. I said, well, if I'm going to do acting, I just want to be the best. And I had come into it really with no background or history in my family or whatever.
Denzel devoted himself to learning his new craft. In his senior year, he transferred to Fordham's Theater Arts Wing in Manhattan and studied with Professor Robert Stone. Denzel was passionate about his acting. Still, he had trouble making it to class until his new mentor read him the riot act.
So finally I went to him and said, "Denzel, I admire your talent, but you get your buns into this class and don't cut so frequently. Otherwise you and I are going to have to go to the mat." And he's the kind of young man who was serious enough to where he took that warning and came to class. And we stayed good friends despite that little tip.
Getting to class may have been a problem. Showing off his talent and charm was not.
It was very early. He was like a senior in Fordham, and he'd only done one show, Emperor Jones, and he was so good to work with. I would give Denzel something that quickly he'd remember it. Never had to repeat with Denzel Washington. You give him a point, he's got it for life. When he walked into the workshop, the girls just went ape. They immediately fell in love with Denzel Washington, He's always been such a gorgeosity, I call him.
In his senior year, Denzel landed the lead in a Fordham production of Othello. His performance proved he had enormous talent, and it literally changed his life. Denzel's childhood mentor came to see him in Othello and was stunned to find this young man who had found his vocation.
The impact and the power of his craft at that time was really quite overwhelming. And at that point, he knew exactly where he wanted to go and what he wanted to do.
I called up all the agents I knew at that point. He was interviewed by several of them, and one of them even signed him up for a television show.
The 1977 television movie Wilma was Denzel's first professional break. It profiled Olympic gold medalist Wilma Rudolph. Denzel got the role of Wilma's husband while he was still a senior at Fordham. On the set, he spotted a pretty young actress, Pauletta Pearson, who had a small part. They became friends. Denzel graduated with a double degree in journalism and drama. Professor Stone pulled more strings and helped get Denzel into the prestigious American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco. But after only a year, he left to test his luck in Hollywood. He arrived with just $30 in his pocket and moved in with some relatives while he looked for work. The Urban League found him a job as an acting teacher at a small private school. But what he really wanted was to perform. Denzel returned home to New York, where money was meager, but work was plentiful in black theater companies. He began dating the woman he met while filming Wilma. Pauletta Pearson was an accomplished pianist, singer, and actress. And within a year, they shared an apartment in Mount Vernon. Pauletta encouraged Denzel in his acting pursuits, and he drew a great deal of strength from her. After a successful string of roles, Denzel hit a 6-month dry spell with no work and no money. Acting may have fed his creative soul, but it didn't pay the rent, and Denzel was ready to quit. But Pauletta helped him make the most important decision of his career.
BioChannel salutes influential black Americans.
By 1979, Denzel had enjoyed a brief taste of success. He was living in his hometown, Mount Vernon, in an apartment he shared with his girlfriend, Pauletta Pearson. Pauletta became a partner in his career. She had been a child prodigy. Since the age of 9, she had performed as a concert pianist around the world. And now she put her career on hold and worked to support them while he looked for acting jobs. It was an uneasy time.
I seen Denzel, he was talking about how rough it was. He was doing a few plays at the time, and he was talking about his struggles of, trying to make it big and, in the entertainment field, and he seemed to be a little bit down. And I said sometimes when things are not going the way I want them to go, I always turn to, playing basketball and messing around with the kids. And so he came down with me to the Boys and Girls Club, and we chose teams and we played, and he kind of let out some of those frustrations.
Denzel was ready to quit acting. He got a job at the County Department of Recreation, but Pauletta would not let him sacrifice his dreams. Her instincts were on the mark. Just a week before Denzel was to begin the job, he won the role of Malcolm X in an off-Broadway production, When Chickens Came Home to Roost. It paid $125 a week. Denzel immersed himself in the role. He listened to Malcolm X speeches, read his books, and dyed his hair red.
He did an enormous amount of research to get in the mannerisms of Malcolm, the tonality, voice quality.
Denzel's portrayal drew favorable reviews, and every performance sold out. Denzel's success as Malcolm X led to another off-Broadway role in a soldier's play. The critics praised his performance as a hot-headed Army private. Denzel won an Obie, the off-Broadway equivalent of a Tony Award. Success built upon success, and in 1980, he was offered a role in a comedy film, Carbon Copy, as the long-lost son of George Segal.
You didn't know it. Lorraine was a lovely person, intelligent, cultured. It's just too much of a shock for me to accept you as her son.
Well, if that's too much of a shock for you, you're liable to go into a coma when you get behind this. Hi, Daddy.
Denzel welcomed the challenge and the substantial money that a film role offered.
You get points today. Got yourself arrested for me, roughed up.
Finally started to act like a father, huh?
Enough so I'll get off your back.
Denzel soon discovered performing in front of the camera was not as easy as it looked.
I was thrust into this leading part, and I really didn't know much about film acting.
Mr. Charlie. That has a certain dignity. Makes me still feel like your son. Flesh of your flesh, blood of your blood. Mistake of my mistakes. You'll feel different after you adopt me. Adopt you? Yeah, I'm 17. It's time I became legal. No way, no how.
Hollywood was beginning to take notice of this rising star. But the studio had noticed the prominent gap in his front teeth and asked him to get it fixed. Much to Denzel's surprise, they paid for his dental work, and there he got his first real taste of star treatment. A television producer saw Denzel in Carbon Copy and A Soldier's Play and wanted to cast him as Dr. Philip Chandler in a new television series, St. Elsewhere. Thinking the stage was his true home, Denzel almost turned down St. Elsewhere, but the money was just too good to pass up.
What do you think about Bermuda, huh? Coral reefs, azure seas?
What do you think of Mrs. Kilmartin? Low-grade fever, peripheral edema.
Her diuretics have been restarted. Per your order. What do you say, huh? Virgin Islands?
St. Elsewhere broke the mold of serialized television. Set in an aging hospital with financial woes, the ensemble cast and controversial storylines were revolutionary for television. Although St. Elsewhere was never a big ratings success, the critics loved it.
St. Elsewhere was a big leap forward in Denzel's career. Not only was he seen by millions of people every week, he also worked with an ensemble company of really good actors. He learned the discipline of doing a weekly show. He learned to play a lot of different moods.
What's interesting about life is the surprise. We're gaining knowledge, unraveling DNA. Do we lose mystery?
Oh, the secret's still there, Chandler. Take a look. Creation of life.
It made for very humble and unselfish acting, I think, because there were so many actors playing leading parts, and some weeks you may have 2 lines, some weeks you may have the entire script. So no one's head was built up so big that they, it definitely kept you humble.
I'll never forget the day my mother told me she was pregnant.
We'll need to check periodically to make sure that the cells are dividing properly.
I was so excited. Another brother, or maybe even a sister. She'd say to people, "You better leave me alone or my big brother will beat you up."
In 1982, in St. Elsewhere's first season, Denzel and Pauletta moved to Los Angeles. The success of St. Elsewhere ended their financial struggles. After 4 years together, the couple married in 1983 and had their first child, John David, a year later. They bought their first $1 million home in an exclusive suburb, and soon after, the Washingtons had a second child, daughter Katya. Although Denzel had settled on the West Coast, he remained loyal to his friends and family back east. In 1983, Denzel was given a brief leave from St. Elsewhere to act in a film. Director Norman Jewison had seen him off-Broadway and wanted him to reprise his role as the brash young Army private in A Soldier's Story, a film version of the play. He felt lucky to get such a quality role. When filming on A Soldier's Story was completed, Denzel returned to St. Elsewhere. The show won 12 Emmys during its 6-year run, and Denzel was earning $30,000 an episode. His financial success allowed him to be selective in choosing his roles. Now a recognizable television and film star, Denzel found roles with integrity. He portrayed an inspiring real-life inner-city teacher in a television movie, The George McKenna Story, with Lynn Whitfield. Then, in 1986, a once-in-a-lifetime role came Denzel's way. Director Richard Attenborough wanted him to play the South African activist Stephen Biko in the film Cry Freedom. To play Biko, he removed the caps on his teeth, gained 30 pounds, grew a goatee, and studied all the material he could find about the real-life freedom fighter. The role offered him the incomparable experience of shooting in Tanzania and Zimbabwe in Africa. Denzel was disappointed that several of his impassioned speeches were cut from the film, but what remained was compelling enough to prompt actor Dustin Hoffman to send Denzel a note which read simply, "What grace."
And for Cry Freedom, Denzel Washington.
The power of his performance earned Denzel his first Academy Award nomination as Best Supporting Actor in 1988. He lost to the more experienced Sean Connery, who won for The Untouchables.
It was interesting, you know, when I went to the event, to the Oscar night, and listening to Sean Connery, who won, saying the last time he was invited to the party was 30 years ago. I guess that meant the last time he was nominated was 30 years ago. So I was saying, well, I hope it's not 30 years before I'm invited back again. But it's nice to be a member of that elite club.
Denzel did earn the NAACP Image Award for his role as Stephen Biko. That same year, Denzel returned to New York to pursue his dream of acting on Broadway. Denzel made his Broadway debut in Checkmates. The play had a successful run, but he soon returned to Hollywood. Although he was recognized as a premier actor, there just were not many roles for an African-American actor to play. So he took a more aggressive approach, campaigning for roles in the British film For Queen and Country and the lighter film The Mighty Quinn, where he played a passionate Jamaican. He was happy to have found such strong roles, but he wasn't pleased about doing the required love scene in The Mighty Quinn with Mimi Rogers. Denzel reportedly did not want to embarrass himself or his family, and he looked so uncomfortable on film that the scene was cut entirely. While each project offered Denzel new challenges, his greatest reward was yet to come. He was about to choose his most significant role to date and win Hollywood's biggest prize.
They've made history in entertainment, sports, and culture. Celebrate Black culture with us on Bio Channel.
At 33 years of age, Denzel had already proven himself on stage, on screen, and on television. He had been nominated for an Oscar and managed to get quality roles, despite the scarcity of such roles for African-American actors in Hollywood. In 1989, Denzel made a difficult decision to portray his riskiest and most emotional role to date. It was a complete departure from the clean-cut, intelligent man he had played. In the film Glory, his character was Trip, a bitter, illiterate slave-turned-soldier.
I didn't know that blacks even fought in the Civil War. I mean, the classes I took, his American history classes, didn't seem to dwell on that, if talk about it at all. So it was a real lesson for me. It was inspiring.
So the white man give you a couple of stripes, next thing you know, you hollering, ordering everybody around like you the master himself.
Denzel took his family on location with him to Georgia and said it was one of the best experiences he had ever had making a film.
Yeah, I ran away when I was 12 years old. I ain't never looked back.
What you doing since then?
I run for president. I ain't winning, though.
Denzel added a memorable touch to one of the film's most difficult scenes. An unrehearsed tear of defiance created a moment that audiences would not soon forget.
The one when he was being whipped, basically he talks about it himself as the reaching back to the ancestors, to the spirits. And I think that's very appropriate.
He has some capability to have gone so deep inside that there is nothing but the truth in his performance.
You can march like the white man, you can talk like him, you can learn his songs, you can even wear his suits, but you ain't never gonna be nothing to him.
The depth of his performance was rewarded on January 29th, 1990. He received the Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor. Golden Globe winners often go on to win an Oscar. And in February, a nomination for an Academy Award followed.
Denzel Washington in Glory.
Denzel returned for the second time for Hollywood's biggest night.
The day of it is the greatest party in the world. You know what you're there for. And what makes it good, you know, the media is all there, but what makes it really exciting is you have that big, you know, the bleachers with all the people there. So when they scream your name, and I mean, it's really what Hollywood is. It's really a Hollywood night, and I don't spend too many of those Hollywood nights.
He faced some stiff competition. Among them, film veterans Marlon Brando, Martin Landau, Dan Aykroyd, and Danny Aiello. On March 26, 1990, it was no longer a dream. Denzel won Hollywood's highest honor.
Thank you. I felt very good, you know. Everybody told me I was going to win, which makes it more difficult. You know, I had dreams about Gina going, and the winner is Danny Aiello. Okay, over here.
Following his night at the Oscars, Denzel received another honor for glory, his second NAACP Image Award.
I said on other occasions that this award was more important than the Academy Award that I didn't get before. Well, I did get one this time, and I still say, to me, this award is much more important. Thank you.
Another exciting event came shortly after all the awards. Twins, Malcolm and Olivia, were born, and that brought the number of Washington children to 4. Following his Oscar award, Denzel experimented with different film roles, and most of his choices did not turn out well. In the comedy Heart Condition, he flexed his newly developed star muscle to tone down the film's racism, but the movie was a box office failure. In Mo Better Blues, director Spike Lee wrote Denzel one of his rare romantic leads. The two locked horns when Denzel refused to take his shirt off in an intimate sex scene. Again, he worried that his children might be embarrassed by his work. He tried a blockbuster action film, Ricochet, with hopes of propelling his career to a new level. The gamble didn't pay off. Denzel swore he would never do another action movie. He yearned to have more creative involvement in his projects, so he took a turn away from big-budget Hollywood films. He starred in the romantic art house film Mississippi Masala, working for a quarter of his usual salary, and he returned to his roots in the theater with a unique interpretation of Shakespeare's tragic Richard III. Unfortunately, his performance was panned by the critics. Undaunted by the bad reviews, he committed himself to continue taking chances, even if he occasionally fell on his face.
A lot of actors have the Oscar go to their heads, and they try to repeat the thing that brought them that prominence. Sometimes they wait around for a year to find the proper vehicle. Denzel didn't do that. He was a working actor, and he took what films he thought were worthwhile. Some of them paid off, some didn't. But at least he was working, he kept himself in front of the public, and he was learning.
New York called Denzel home in May of 1991. With his mother at his side, Denzel went to his alma mater, Fordham University, to receive an honorary degree.
I remember him repeatedly talking about his great affection for his mother, and she was sitting up in an adjoining box at the A.V. Fisher Hall, and he meant it. He knew what he owed to her.
Although Denzel had not remained as close to his father, Denzel Sr. had always been proud of his son.
He was talking about Denzel, and he used this term. He said he always had actability.
1991 was marked with tragedy. Denzel's father suffered a stroke. It devastated Denzel to see the strong man he remembered as a young child lying helpless in a Virginia hospital. Not long after, the senior Washington died at the age of 81. Sadly, his father would never see the film his son was shooting. The performance that was inspired by his father's preaching, and what many believe is his greatest and most controversial role to date.
Stay tuned as our celebration of black culture continues on Bio Channel. Bio Channel salutes influential black Americans.
Denzel Washington had shaped his Oscar-winning career not only by the roles he had accepted, but also by the roles he'd refused. He rejected roles that were too small in Platoon and Terminator 2. He passed on the light story of racism in Amos and Andrew, and walked away from $1 million fee for Love Field opposite Michelle Pfeiffer because he didn't like the script. The waiting finally paid off with a role Denzel gladly accepted, Malcolm X. Telling the story of the controversial black separatist would prove to be the challenge he was looking for.
This is what they do. They send drugs in Harlem down here to pacify us. They send alcohol down here to pacify us. They send prostitution down here to pacify us.
The tumultuous production of Malcolm X was plagued with problems and made headlines. Director Spike Lee faced heated opposition from a black Muslim group which felt Lee was not qualified to tell Malcolm X's story. The film was 3 hours long and ran over budget. Denzel remained focused on his meticulous preparation for the role. He added to what he had learned many years earlier for his stage portrayal of Malcolm X.
It was so fascinating, so interesting, that it went by so quickly. I didn't want it to end. It was the first film I've done that I didn't want to end.
But you have to see that all of this is hypocrisy. These Negro leaders are running around telling the white man that everything is all right, that we got everything under control, that everything the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches is wrong.
For inspiration, Denzel drew upon memories of his father's strength behind the pulpit. He also trained with the Nation of Islam, and he gave up liquor and pork. To look like Malcolm, Denzel lost 20 pounds, had his hair dyed red and straightened, and he interviewed Malcolm X's widow and 2 of his brothers.
They all talked about Malcolm's great sense of humor, how he loved to laugh. He was a very warm, caring person. And I think this really gave Denzel help in knowing that he had to bring humanity to his portrayal, which he did magnificently.
Will you marry me?
Yes.
You heard what I said, right?
Did you hear my answer?
Yes, I think so.
Brother Malcolm? Are you eating?
Yeah, I've been eating.
Good.
I love you, Betty.
Malcolm X earned Denzel his 3rd Oscar nomination in just 5 years.
Denzel Washington and Malcolm X.
This time he lost the Academy Award to Al Pacino, who won for Scent of a Woman. However, he did win his 4th NAACP Image Award for his performance. Denzel's string of successes brought him under increased media scrutiny. In a Barbara Walters special that aired back-to-back with the 1993 Oscar telecast, Denzel made a televised confession. He appeared to admit to infidelity by saying, "Temptation is all around, and I haven't been perfect." The press latched onto that tidbit. Rumors of his infidelity circulated. Denzel criticized the press for making a story out of it. For an actor who had an untarnished public image, it was an unexpected and rare admission. Denzel Washington liked to talk about his career, but rarely about his personal life. He felt betrayed by the press.
Believe everything you hear, I guess.
He don't want to end up with entertainment and society writing something down at the end after all the success. You know, that he was on drugs or he treated his family wrong or, you know, things like, he doesn't want that. He wants to be the best actor he can be, and he wants to be the best family man he can be, and he don't want people to say anything bad about him.
Denzel tried to ignore the bad press. He dedicated himself even more to his career and his family. That same year, 10 years after they had been married, Pauletta and Denzel renewed their wedding vows while on a trip to Africa. Bishop Desmond Tutu did the honors. In 1993, the success of 3 films diverted the public's attention away from his personal life. He sought out roles that would prove he could hold his own at the box office, regardless of color. In a bit of unusual casting, Denzel tried Shakespeare again, in Kenneth Branagh's Much Ado About Nothing. He had always campaigned for the roles he wanted, but for The Pelican Brief, it was Julia Roberts who campaigned to get Denzel the part of the crusading reporter. It was originally written for a white actor, but Julia convinced director Alan Pakula that Denzel was right for the part.
I wouldn't have thought of Denzel, but what I'm looking for is a seriousness as a man, a weight as a man, somebody you can trust, that this girl can trust.
Pakula decided before Denzel signed on that the love scenes of the book were not going to work in the film, fueling speculation that it was a racial issue. The director said race never had anything to do with it. If Hollywood needed to be convinced that Denzel Washington could appeal to a mass audience, The Pelican Brief offered proof. Worldwide, it grossed nearly $200 million.
Mr. Beckett!
His next success was just around the corner.
Mr. Beckett, come in.
It's good to see you again, Counselor.
Innocuous. How are you? What happened to your face?
I have AIDS.
Oh.
Philadelphia marked the first time a major studio produced a film about AIDS that appealed to a mass audience. Denzel volunteered to play the homophobic lawyer who defends a gay AIDS victim.
One of our producers was on an airplane with Denzel who said, let me read that. That sounds interesting. And suddenly I was on the phone with Denzel in the morning, hearing that he would love to play Joe Miller, and Tom in the afternoon saying he'd love to play Andrew Beckett.
How many lawyers you go to before you call me?
9.
Continue.
Denzel felt he could not have played the Tom Hanks role because it might have been too embarrassing for his school-aged son, John David. And yet the role he did choose was not easy.
Did you find a lawyer? I'm a lawyer.
Philadelphia was kind of a chance for Denzel. It was not a very sympathetic character. Tom Hanks won the Oscar. Denzel did not. But he was a good half of that team that made it such a compelling film.
The award-winning Philadelphia was a hit, grossing more than $200 million in theaters around the world. Now Denzel wanted more creative control. It was time to make a film of his own.
Celebrate black culture with us on Bio Channel.
As far as the audience was concerned, the devil didn't have enough going for it. The film cost $20 million to make, but only took in $16 million. It would take more than one failure at this point in his career to break Denzel's spirit. He was enjoying a great life with his friends and family. While Denzel could afford many luxuries, he preferred a life of simplicity amid all the splendor. He and Pauletta enjoyed barbecues at home and going to Laker basketball games. And Denzel always made time for his kids, even acting as coach for their sports teams. He tried to spend as much time as possible at home with his family while still pursuing bigger and bigger films. Following the hits Pelican Brief and Philadelphia, Denzel chose another colorblind role, playing the second-in-command to Gene Hackman in Crimson Tide. Taking in nearly $100 million in the theaters, Crimson Tide was a hit. For his next film, Denzel forgot his vow never to do another action film and took on Virtuosity to please his son. Denzel should have ignored his son's begging. Virtuosity was a flop. Like Ricochet, there was too much running and jumping and not enough acting. And again, Denzel vowed no more action films. Denzel had a more family-oriented movie in mind for his next project. His Mundy Lane Productions produced a remake of the 1947 classic The Bishop's Wife and renamed it The Preacher's Wife. Denzel took on Cary Grant's part as an angel and had to do a hard sell to get Whitney Houston to take on the role of the spirited wife.
He said, you got to do this film with me. I said, well, I don't know. I'm kind of tired right now. He said, but no, you don't understand. You have to do this film with me. This film is most important. And I said, well, all right, tell me about it. He began to tell me about it and all the essentials and all the elements that went into it and what's going into it and stuff. And then he said, well, you're the only one that can sing the gospel.
Denzel seemed more at home making a movie with family appeal. The Preacher's Wife was more successful than Mundy Lane's first film venture, making $48 million at the box office. Glory director Ed Zwick called Denzel back to the military for Courage Under Fire. 20th Century Fox hired Denzel for the highest salary ever paid to an African-American actor for a dramatic role. Over $10 million.
There are a handful of people who can do what he does. When I think back to Courage Under Fire, I just think about his generosity as an actor, and it set an example for me. It's something I'll never forget, ever.
Denzel had become an accomplished producer and a highly paid actor in just a few years. His success and professional image drew comparisons over the years to another handsome African-American actor, Sidney Poitier. Denzel felt the comparisons were racist.
Denzel was naturally compared to Sidney Poitier, who was the first big black star in films. They both had a romantic air about them. They were both really excellent actors. But Denzel wanted to be known as himself.
With his success came more attention from the press, most of which he found off base and irritating. People magazine proclaimed Denzel one of the sexiest people alive. Always reluctant to be known as a sex symbol, Denzel dismissed that notion. He claimed that no women lined up at his door when he was a young man, and he must have just aged well. Although he has reached the heights of Hollywood celebrity, Denzel has not changed as a person. Even old friends agree he is basically the same guy who left Mount Vernon.
I don't think Denzel has changed any. I mean, he's always been a genuine person. He's always been real and caring.
However, even if Denzel has not changed, other people have, at least in the way they look at him. Denzel finds it difficult to go home again.
It's hard for you to go back. You know, you go back and in the way that I'd like to go back, you go back to just try and be a part of the neighborhood, and you can't because, you know, everybody wants a job or everybody's got a script or they're looking at your watch or one thing or the other, and you want to be yourself, but you're not allowed to be yourself.
In the spring of 1998, Denzel teamed up for the third time with Spike Lee. In Lee's tribute to the game of basketball, He Got Game. In a critically acclaimed performance, Denzel played a convicted criminal, a far cry from his usual good guy roles.
People said, you know, he's our prince, you know, and he has a great responsibility to bear, and I think that has affected his roles that he's done.
Denzel felt no constraints about his personal responsibilities. He gave of his wealth and his time. He reportedly donated $2.5 million for a new building at the church he and his family attend. He stayed involved with the Boys and Girls Club of America, becoming the national spokesman for the organization which had kept him off the streets many years ago. Whether as an actor, a producer, or simply as a person, Denzel Washington pursued his goals with integrity and a genuine desire to spread goodness.
He shows us the kind of example that your family is important. God is important. Your friends are important. You know, your past is important. And he gives us all that legacy.
It was great working with you, Counselor.
I believe that that's going to be his greatest contribution if he never comes back to Mount Vernon and does anything else. His family role model is going to live a long time in the eyes of many, many people in this city.
This is who you are. Beautiful. You're beautiful black self with pride and dignity.
I really can't believe it.
He is at the absolute top of his game, and I tell you without shame that I will be stealing from him for the rest of my career.
More than 2 decades of dedication to his craft have earned Denzel Washington accolades and awards. He has survived the gossip and the pressures of Hollywood. He is free to choose his roles regardless of race. Not bad for a preacher's son from Mount Vernon.
Denzel went on to win a second Oscar for Training Day in 2002. This time, it was for leading man. Don't think Denzel's stopping at 2 Oscars. With Image Awards, honorary degrees, and Golden Globes to his credit, he recently added director to his job description. The film Antoine Fisher has him on both sides of the camera. Denzel Washington continues to challenge himself and his audiences by taking on tough roles. Here's one good guy not afraid to play the bad one.